Hello and welcome to Martech Advisor's Executive Interview Series. I'm Ginger Conlon, a contributing editor to Martech Advisor. And joining us today is Nick Francis, who is CEO of Help Scout. Welcome, Nick.
Thank you so much.
So glad you're here with us today. We are going to talk about trends and opportunities with customer support, which is, you know, always important, especially in this day of, customer experience being so important. But before we jump into that, let's start briefly by introducing Help Scout. In a sentence or two, or maybe three, what is Help Scout and what makes it unique?
Sure, our mission is to make great customer support achievable for businesses of all sizes. And we do that in two ways. One is by making a few products that help companies do email support at scale and create great self service content with a knowledge base. But we also are very active with content on our blog and in the community, really trying to elevate the role of customer support as a career path and educating people about best practices.
That's so important. I mean, you think about customer support as the face of a company, so it's awesome. So let's talk about customer support. If you think about the help desk, it's changed significantly from the days of green screens. Although sometimes I wonder if there are still some green screens out there. So, what are some of the tools that are available that maybe business executives aren't aware of that have the potential to significantly improve their service performance?
Sure. Well, I'm a little biased. I mean, when I looked at the help desk space when we founded Help Scout maybe 6 years ago, I felt like, man, I feel like help desks were really born in the enterprise and they weren't designed for a great customer experience.
Hmm.
So if I were to summarize what's happened over the last 10 years, I'd say that help desks became a lot more human.
Right.
And I'd like to think that Help Scouts contributed to that in some way. We launched the first help desk that was actually completely invisible to customers, meaning there's no customer portal to log into. There's actually no robotic email that you're getting back and forth. It looks just like a normal personalized email. In fact, 1 in 1,200 people on the planet Earth have used Help Scout and they just never knew about it, which is something that we're pretty proud of. And I think that one thing that's also changed is just the introduction of this term we call support driven growth, which is treating the support team and that area of the business as not so much just a cost center anymore, but it's a way for many businesses to have more effective marketing and to retain their customers for longer. So that's something we talk a lot about.
Yeah, that is so important, and brings me to my next question, which is, as I said earlier, there's no escaping customer experience as a hot topic. So, if you look at that broader view of customer support, how can marketers use today's help desk technologies to help them make that bigger impact on customer experience and work with the service and support teams to make that happen?
You know, it's funny as leaders, and I'm very guilty of this myself. We get really infatuated with the tools and the technology because we think that we can implement a tool to solve our problem. But sometimes it's just not that simple. It's not that binary. Uh, in my opinion, making support a and even giving support an even greater role in terms of the customer experience is all about cultivating a company culture that's not only inclusive of the support team as a marketing channel, but gives them kind of the space and the autonomy to make a difference. So I hate to say it to other leaders, but it's not about the tool that you use. It's more about cultivating that culture that values customer support in the organization and is inclusive of what they're trying, the kind of value that they're adding. And if you find that, and we certainly make efforts to do that at Help Scout, which I could talk about, but if you find that, then it can be really powerful.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that. What are some examples of some steps that business leaders can take to engage their service employees? Is it more recognition? Is it bringing them closer with some of the other teams? What are some of your recommendations?
Sure. Well, one thing that we're doing is pushing against a really negative stigma in the marketing world that customer support is this entry level job with a low ceiling, and it's for somebody that just wants to get going in a professional role. we look at customer support as a viable career path and something that is a true craft for people that become really good at it. So if you can look at your support team, it starts with the people, right? And so it's about having really great people that are passionate about this, that are learning new things, and actually want to stay in this role for some period of time. I think that's really important. It comes down to just having really excellent people. And when you do, you find that they're capable of doing much more than just maintaining a certain level of service for your customers, but they can actually be contributors and partners on the marketing and success side as well.
Absolutely. You think about, great customer service and support is really a marketing tool because creates a better customer experience and you can make that part of your competitive advantage.
Right. And one thing that we've done to try and uh, loosen up the silos that can typically exist in an organization between sales and marketing and support is combine those onto the same team. So at Help Scout, we have a growth team, and support and marketing are on that same team. So they're constantly in communication. They understand each other's goals, and they work as one. And that's really important. That support doesn't end up just kind of being this silo over here. That they are active partners in helping to move the growth organization forward.
Excellent. Yeah, and you think about that collaboration is so essential today to make business move at the speed it needs to move and get the results that you need in today's environment.
Sure.
So let's, yes, the people are essential. Having the right people, training them, and treating them well. But let's talk a little bit more about technology.
Yep.
Um, what are one of the benefits of a tool or platform for anything, but especially something like customer service and support, is the efficiencies it can bring to the team, and help them out. What are some processes that service teams should be looking to improve today to make the business the biggest positive impact?
It really depends on, it's sort of a case by case thing. So at the low level with a smaller business, you're just making sure that things don't slip through the cracks. And a great help desk is able to do that. You can get pretty much whatever volume your company gets, and a good help desk is going to make sure that your team stays on the same page. Nothing slips through the cracks. Every customer gets an answer, and you're able to close those things out in a way that makes a customer happy. But on the high end, at a significant scale, when you've kind of got the collaboration side figured out, sometimes it's about reporting, right? So how can I extract really valuable and meaningful data that we can use elsewhere in the organization? How can I extract that out of content that's really unstructured, right? It's just emails or chats or whatever. So how can I take that and categorize it in a structured way that's valuable to the organization and gives me some quantifiable ways to measure customer happiness, customer feedback, feature requests, things like that. So being able to take that unstructured data and turn it into structured data is something that's really important for a help desk to be great at. And then in addition, when it comes to just processes, uh, we find that establishing some good processes around triage. So there's a small percentage of your incoming requests that are just going to be complicated.
Right.
For Help Scout, it's less than 10% of what we receive is a pretty complex issue that needs to be managed. And so we've developed a pretty efficient process for triaging things. That way, the 90% plus that are pretty easy to get to, we can get to those really fast. I believe at last count, more than 60% of our customers were getting a response within 15 minutes. And we're able to do that because we can triage the more complex cases out pretty quickly.
Right. That's excellent. So, if you think about kind of looking at all that from the reverse side, and some of the challenges. I mean, you mentioned getting data in the right places. Make sure you have a good triage process as ways to improve. What are some of the challenges that are getting in the way of making those things happen, and also any challenges with some of the existing technologies that you have advice for um, business leaders to get past?
Sure. I mean, sometimes we find that really good, competent, super smart support leaders will get a little wrapped around the axle with process and reporting, right? Because they're managing up, they're trying to do a great job, and they make it so that supporting a customer becomes so complicated that it just takes a lot longer than it should. In the end, it's about establishing a set of best practices and a baseline level of education with your team, and then giving them the space to go out and do their job really well and really efficiently. So you don't want to overdo it on the process. You don't want to overdo it on creating that structured data from unstructured data. It's a really fine balance. And so a lot of times we'll see people go a little too far. They've got too much process so that it just kind of slows everybody down. And you certainly want to give people the space to go out and do a great job. So we're usually helping customers balance on one end or another of that spectrum to just find the right workflow.
So, I think a lot of opportunity as the help desk tools evolve for doing more that maybe, teams didn't really think about or just need to think about differently. Any advice for ways that customer service and support teams can use tools differently? Maybe it's more about personalization, or what are some recommendations you have?
Well, the hot topic these days, which won't surprise you, is AI, and people are thinking about how they might be able to use um, a significant data set to inform uh, to inform their agents. So when we think about AI at Help Scout, it's always about being human powered, right? Like we don't believe AI is far enough along to where it can actually do great customer service or great customer support. So one thing that you'll find that a lot of uh, good help desk products are starting to do is just put the right answers right in front of people without them having to search for them, right? So uh, a good example is, based on the content of an email, being able to suggest a relevant uh, knowledge base article, suggest a relevant workflow, like series of actions, tags that can be added, custom fields that can be filled out based on the content of the email. So we're seeing AI as just a way of being able to make the human people that are doing the help desk work more efficient, but not really lose out on any quality. So that's certainly something that we're all very excited about in the industry, and it enables some of these people that are doing support full time to sort of move up in the funnel a little bit to get involved in some more proactive customer success type activity. So again, we're seeing marketing and support teams work more closely together. So once we're able to handle a lot of the low level customer support stuff in a more efficient way, that allows these people to elevate their role and their responsibility in the organization to then take on more proactive stuff to move the business forward.
So it sounds like a little bit of, proactive service and a little bit of triage that AI can help with.
Yes, you'll never find an organization that says that we don't have more room to do more customer success, right? Like organizations always have more room to help customers be more successful, and so we'd like for support, the people in support roles to be elevated into that kind of activity to help the business.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you talked about AI, and that brings me to, let's wrap up with a look at what you're excited about that's coming up in two areas. One is, something in the market, a tool or a trend. Maybe it's more about AI that you want to share with us. And also within Help Scout, any new features or upgrades coming up that we should know about?
So we're in the midst of a real shift in the market, which is moving from, uh, I'm going to call them old school messaging channels like email and phone into more contextual channels, messaging channels. So in-app or, whether that's mobile or web, but actually just being able to chat with support or have a conversation with support right where you are. Whether maybe it's Facebook Messenger, right? Like, but whatever channels we're using or whatever apps we're using, we expect the company to have a presence right then and there and be able to provide help in a more contextually relevant way. And that's kind of the shift that's happening in the market, is just trying to parse what's happening there and develop really good solutions for that. So we're thinking a lot about in-app messaging and chat. The really interesting thing about chat is that it's super difficult for a company because it's really hard to scale, because it's very burstable, and it's hard to manage customer expectations. When they start a chat, if they don't get an answer within 60 to 90 seconds, they're starting to get really impatient. Whereas with an email, if you get a response back in 90 minutes, you're thrilled, right? So it's a totally different expectation that customers have that a lot of the people making the software aren't incredibly sensitive to, and so it can result in actually a lower level of satisfaction, even if you're quicker with your level of support. So we're being very careful about how to manage expectations properly within these new channels, and trying to build tools that allow the company to provide that level of support that they want in a scalable way, but in a way that also keeps customer satisfaction at or higher than the other channels like email and phone. So a really fun and interesting challenge, but you'll definitely see us get into a more messaging style type communication.
That's excellent. It's such an important consideration that you just brought up about thinking about the expectations and how they change in each channel based on what customers are used to in that environment. And I think people who um, may not know support as well might think that chat is easier because, oh, while someone's typing, I can handle someone else and handle multiple chats. But the fact is, it's more complicated than it maybe seems at first glance. So it's interesting that you point that out.
Yeah, multi-channel support is this big buzzword in the customer service world, and the basically the real core problem is that they just take all of these channels and funnel them into one big queue. The problem is you've got all levels of customer expectations to manage in that single queue. And that's kind of a recipe for disaster. So we've been very, very careful about making sure that we align any channels that we support with the customer expectation, and that does take a bit more time. So we're dipping our toe into the multi-channel world just to make sure that customers are being taken care of.
Yeah. Wow. So a lot to consider. Well, Nick, thank you so much for all the great insight today.
It's been my pleasure, Ginger. Thank you.
Thanks, and I want to thank everyone who's watched us today, and also be sure to check out and subscribe to Martech Advisors YouTube channel for other executive interview series. And thanks again for being here with us.